Meeting controls. Club deck unmuted. Meeting controls. Audio now unmuted. Club deck unmuted. Public room unmuted.
All right. Should we get started? Any update from Mrs. Subramani on if she
Hey,
started?
Pranav, go ahead. I think we are already. It's already time. Go ahead.
All right. So welcome everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Pranav. I am 15 years old, and as my bio says, I am a tech enthusiast. I love tinkering with tech. We've also got Mr. Subramani here, who's going to be moderating things with me. Um, And so today I'd just like to talk a bit about, mobile accessibility, to talk about how the OS is working for accessibility,
Room control users 3.
and
Followed by the speakers 2.
how you
Currently using double
can,
accessibility. Room favorites currently using double accessibility.
how you can leverage this. I'll be giving a few things on how you can leverage this, both as an app developer or look out for this rather as a consumer as well. So you can kind of let people in, ping people in. Also, the live stream is up on YouTube. So I'll be showing you a lot of demos, and in between, if you do have a question, you can raise your hand. And Mr. Subramani, maybe you can moderate that, let people onto the stage if they have a question. And we will end with a proper Q&A. All right. So I've got my phone here, and the mobile device is actually a very accessible platform for any type of person with a so-called different ability. This started actually in 2009 with voiceover really taking center stage on the iPhone. It's actually still there today with all the Apple products, be it the iPhone, be it a Mac, an Apple Watch, or anything. And Android followed suit very quickly in 2013 with TalkBack, which is actually my personal screen reader on the phone, as I'm an Android user, and it is a lot of people's favorite one. So mobile devices is something that people we use just as much, if not even more, for people. For people with visual impairment, we need these devices extensively. So how does this work? So every mobile device actually has a screen reader. As I said, TalkBack is the screen reader for us, and there are other features as well, like having mono audio for people with hearing problems, or having grayscale text, inverted colors for people who have print disabilities. There are even controls for motor and mobile disabilities, people who can't use their hands as much, and so on and so forth. So I am personally blind, and so I'll be talking more about the side of things that I've experienced. But it would be fun to see if people pitch in and give some more tips on it. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you a quick demo of the screen reader. So I have connected. Can I get a quick update on if you guys can hear a voice speaking at a fast rate? Can I get someone to speak this out? Maybe Mr. Subramani can go ahead and tell me.
Double accessibility works for the mic. From.
Can you hear the voice? Is it audible?
Disability dialog. Closed. Speakers 2. Followed by the speakers. Followed by the speakers. Users 5 other users. Room controls. Public room. Mute. Mute everyone.
Subramani, are you here? I need an update on if you can hear my screen reader. All right, so I'm just going to assume that you can. So each phone is as I said, comes with a screen reader, and this is a very fast speed, so I'm quickly going to slow it down.
Slower. Currently cloudy. 26 degrees C.
And we're on our home screen. Okay, so I've just unlocked my device. We're on our home screen, and it's very simple the way that we navigate. We actually navigate by either moving our finger around the screen like this,
Notification shade. 74252. Chrome. Play Store.
finding icons, or we also navigate by swiping, which is what I personally use all the time. Swiping left to right or right to left on the screen,
Chrome.
kind of flicking your finger across.
WhatsApp has 6 notifications. Search. Voice search. Saturday, July 31st. Partly cloudy. Apps list. Home has 2 notifications. Messages. Play Store. Home.
And so we can go through our icons. Now, say I wanted to open up Play Store, for example, I would just double tap on the screen.
Play Store. Selected. For you. Heading.
And there we go. We've got Play Store.
Signed in as tech with Phoenix
I can
Rails.
click on this.
Account and setting. Signed in. Google account. Manage apps and
I
device.
could go into Manage Apps, for
Manage apps and
example,
device.
by double tapping.
Select. No harmful apps. All apps up to date. Last updated at
And if
10
I wanted to go
05 a.m.
home, you could double tap if you've got that home icon. But I personally use the gesture control, so I can just swipe up,
Pixel. Recent apps.
and it takes
Home
me
screen. 1 of 1.
home.
Click. Apps list. Clubhouse.
I can also go into my apps list, and it's funny that Clubhouse was the first to be announced. But that's my apps list. Now I could
Home screen. 1 of 1.
scroll
Apps
through
list.
my apps list by actually taking
Showing
two
items 1 to
fingers
30 of
and
48.
swiping up.
Showing search. Slack and grid. Safety. Log and grid. Apps list. Showing sim toolkit.
And it took me there.
Slack. Tab Oracle. Tech free. Delight. Tube my meetings. Web. Womig. YouTube. Past new notifications.
And so on and so forth. These are some of the gestures.
Home screen.
I'm gonna
1 of
go
1.
home back,
Sunday, July 31st. Out of grid.
and we've got that. So there are a lot of voices to choose from, but those are kind of the basics. Now I'm gonna start by showing you a very simple and accessible app,
Showing items
which
21 to 1.
basically is
Meetings. Map. YouTube.
YouTube.
YouTube. Past.
Okay,
Disconnected. Out of grid.
and I'm going to talk about a lot of things that might actually help. The first thing that you want to keep out, an eye for is, are your buttons unlabeled? Are your buttons labeled or are they unlabeled? By labeled buttons, I mean this.
YouTube. Past. Disconnected.
It tells me if the button, what the button is.
Notifications. Button. Free. Search. Button. Account.
Right? These are some buttons. Unlabeled buttons would just basically either say button or it say unlabeled. Okay, and that is a bit bad design strategy because it results in your users actually not knowing what they're really clicking on, right? So each button comes with something called an accessibility label. And it's always advisable to actually apply this accessibility label to your button. So does anyone have any questions on how does mobile accessibility work generally?
Mute.
Pranav, I think we need to bring people on stage.
Sure.
People in the audience, please let us know if you have a question or if you want to have some discussion with Pranav. I will bring you up on the stage. I thought first, Pranav, you will finish the presentation.
Yeah, no, I decided
And
to
then we
make it
will-
a bit more interactive and such.
That's true. But I think the best thing would be to finish what you have to say, because that way, people will also have an understanding and they might ask you questions.
All right, cool. So I'll do that. So you guys can then ask me at the end of my spiel. All right. So we've got the first thing is actually using labeled buttons, right? Making sure that the buttons that you're using are labeled. And so YouTube was a good example. What I'm going to show you now is an example with an app that actually has uh, oh, buttons that are unlabeled. So I'm going to go over to TubeMine, which I use for YouTube.
Checking all channels you have subscribed till now.
And no, it's
0%
not a
progress bar.
YouTube
Out of
subscriber
grid.
mining app.
Open navigation door. Button.
So this is fine, open navigation drawer.
15,641. Button.
But there we go, see button.
Button.
And another one.
204. Button.
I have no idea what these buttons are. So if I click on one,
Support. Overback.
well, now I got to know it's support.
Main activity. Button. Button.
And then this one,
Messages. Overback.
well,
Main
it's
activity.
supposed to be notifications, but it's not labeled. You can see it just says button. So this actually turns out to be a bad design strategy, right? Because then a screen reader user would not exactly know. The next thing, which I may actually talk, is a bit more theoretical, but it's what's called the touch targets. Okay, so you know that on phones, everything that you touch has like a touch target, right? So as soon as you touch it, what happens is your phone maps out the coordinates of where you have touched and applies that. And so you might imagine that many a times a button or some kind of an interactable element, like a link or a checkbox, might actually not. It might have a very small touch target, right? And so to activate that, you might have to really take your finger and pinpoint it at a certain location. And you can kind of imagine that this already turns into bad design strategy, because then for people with motor disabilities, this actually becomes then very hard for them to be able to manage, right? To be able to touch at a very small location, they might want to have a slightly larger area of a touch target. And so, what the recommended touch targets on mobile devices, it's actually 48 by 48 pixels. But the best thing that you can actually do with touch targets is make sure that your touch targets are responsive to the mobile device. For example, I'm using a phone with a 5.5-inch screen. I am someone who likes a smaller screen. And so, what happens in some of the apps that I use is that the touch target for my screen is slightly smaller. But then for a screen that, if I switch to a phone that's like a 6 or 6.4 inch, or even a 6.8 inch display, the touch target might actually grow for that display. So you can kind of see how this might actually be useful if you don't want two touch targets to overlap, right? Now, the third thing is actually it comes to what's called tab navigation. So, I'm going to show you a good example of this by going back to YouTube.
Showing item by speed at home YouTube. YouTube. Account. Out of
And if
grid.
I go to the bottom of the screen,
Subscription. Type. Selected. Home button.
we've got some tabs. We've got home.
Shorts button. Create button. Subscriptions. New content is available button. Library button.
First of all, make sure that if your tab has more content, you mention it to the screen reader, okay? So here for subscriptions, it's told me new content is available. So let's take the
New content is
subscription
available
tab.
button.
Now, this is an important thing where if you double tap on subscriptions,
Subscriptions. New content is available. Selected. Subscriptions.
and now it tells me what tab is selected.
Button.
Let's go back to shorts. I don't use. Oh, shorts started playing as soon as I opened it. Wow. I didn't notice that.
Speed at home YouTube. YouTube. Back.
Okay, I'm
Button.
just
Out of
gonna
grid. See more. Back.
back.
YouTube. Shorts button. Home button.
Let's go back to home.
Selected. Short. Library button.
And
Rotate screen.
what you might also want to try is
Showing items.
doing that. So swiping with two fingers to the left or right to be able to select a tab. Just how you might actually swipe up across your tab bar. So that makes it very useful. Now the last thing with regards to a screen reader is actually
Apps list.
giving more information to the
Search.
user.
Zoom. Slack.
I'm going to open up
Tab. Tech. Meeting. WhatsApp. Homemade. WhatsApp.
WhatsApp
WhatsApp.
for this.
Search. Out of grid. More options. Button. Camera.
And I'm finding the button.
Selected. Chats. 4. Snap. Tablet on Academy of Music.
Let's
7:39 p.m.
take this chat.
98,861, 10,573. Can't wipe. 200 messages. Been listed.
And if we
Tablet
go,
on Academy of Music. Button. Tablet
it's
on
not
Academy of
saying
Music.
it. Oh wow.
7:39 p.m. Plus 91, 98,861,
Just give me a second.
10,573. Can't wipe. 200 messages.
For some reason, it's
Calls.
oh
Button.
wow. Okay,
Tablet on.
fine. I have another way to
WhatsApp.
show
Button.
you.
Cap.
Okay.
Voice message. Button. Double tap and hold to record. Slide left to cancel recording. Slide up to lock recording on. Release the send.
All right. So if we look at this voice message button,
Camera. Button.
this
Voice
one,
message. Button. Double tap and hold to record. Slide left to cancel recording. Slide up to lock recording on. Release the send.
and it gives us all the info about this button. It tells us how to use the button, to slide left to cancel the recording, swipe up to lock recording, release to send, and so on and so forth. And that is really cool, right? Because it informs us about everything that we can do with that particular button. All right, that was cool, but screen readers are not the only things that are there, right? There are a lot of other things as well in terms of accessibility. And so before moving on, I'm actually going to give you a quick rundown of the different accessibility settings. Now I'm using a Pixel, but this is going to be mostly the same for each phone with certain different
Safety.
names.
Set.
So
Settings.
I'm going to open up
Wi-Fi
settings
on. Network connected devices.
and I'm going to scroll
Privacy. Permit. Okay. Secure. Account. Accessibility.
to accessibility.
Navigate up. Button. Out of list.
This is then almost all phones today. And if you look at accessibility,
Search set. Open feedback. Downloaded apps. Heading. And list.
you might have some, well,
Sound notif- screen read.
don't know about
Select to
that.
speak.
So
Talk.
we've got
Select your selected text.
select to speak, which basically reads out selected text.
Talkback. On slash speak items on screen.
That's what I'm using.
Text to speech output.
That is where you can configure text to speech settings. So if you open an app that uses text to speech, which is a software that converts text to into like a speech format, this is where you can manage your
Email.
engines.
Display. Heading.
And then in display we've got,
Font size. 100%. Showing items.
we can
1
actually
35.
modify the font size.
Display size. Largest. Showing items.
Display
5
size,
16, 35.
I've had it set it to largest because I like to reach the bottom of the screen.
Dark theme on. Switch.
We've got a dark theme that's quite useful.
Magnification.
Oh,
Dark theme. Magnification off.
magnification is something that you might want to take care of.
Color correction off.
Color correction kind of corrects up your display colors. It's a bit
Color inversion off.
We've even got color inversion. This inverts your colors.
Large mouse pointer off. Switch.
That is, if you've connected a mouse, it creates a larger pointer for the
Remove
mouse.
animations on. Switch.
And this is something that I've kept on to remove animations.
Interaction controls.
Here
Heading.
we have interaction controls.
Accessibility menu. Off slash control phone me large menu. Showing item 17.
Now,
to
this is
23,
one thing
35.
that we're going to talk about at the end as well. Accessibility menu, where we can kind of control all the phone features through just the one menu.
Switch access. Off slash control device with switches.
Switch access is quite cool as well, where you can kind of use different buttons, switches that you can get off Amazon to actually control your phone.
Auto click. No timing off.
That is for switch access.
Power button ends call on. Switch.
That's quite useful because it ends the call with the power button.
Auto rotate screen off. Switch.
That's fun as well. I keep that off.
Touch and hold delay. Short.
And that is important because when you touch and hold on the screen, when you long press, how long does it actually take?
Time to take action. Accessibility timeout. Default. Showing item 17.
And that
to
is
23 of
basically
35.
the timeout that is required to
Caption.
transcribe.
Automatically caption media. Caption preferences off. Experimental.
And
Heading. High contrast text on. Switch.
high contrast text, I've kept this on.
Advanced. Shortcut from lock screen. Pixel launcher. Saturday.
All right, that was
21st.
interesting. So
Instagram.
we've got a lot of settings to play with here. And by the way, we
7:55,
also have
33
a
PM,
status
6:55,
bar right up
7:55,
top.
Instagram.
Oh.
Caps list. Pixel launcher.
So, what can you do? Well, let's start with captioning. If you're playing a video or anything really, it's always better to caption the text so that anyone can see it. And remember, when you're creating these features, it's always useful for others as well. For example, someone who doesn't exactly need the captions, it's not something that they completely depend on, can actually also be very they can also find a good use for it. Because say you're traveling in a bus or something where you want to watch a video, but you can't really play the audio because there are people around you. So you could just listen to you could just watch the captions, see the screen and look at the captions. It will also be really cool if you could get users to be able to download these captions, copy these captions, or send it somewhere, right? You can kind of think of uses of those as well if you want to send a certain text of a video to someone. Live transcribe is also quite useful if you're doing something into like live streaming or something, where if you're live streaming, live transcribe is exactly for you. It's basically just captioning but live as it happens, right? So even if you're doing a video call like WhatsApp, you might want to actually keep a live transcribe or live captioning feature right there. Now let's talk about some things that you can use in the operating system. But the first thing is the camera. Okay, the camera is always a tool for the visually impaired or anyone really to be able to use to put to good use. A very good example of this is actually Google Lens, which lets you take a picture of something and kind of get more information about it. Another example is Google Lookout or Seeing AI on iOS, which lets you do various things with with your camera, such as identify lighting conditions, look at color, look at scenes, read text, and so on and so forth. That's cool. So how might you use it? Well, let's say you have an app that uses the camera. Make sure that the camera detects the person's face and helps the person align their face. This is something that a lot of people are having problems with, where if we want to align our face, it actually becomes exceedingly hard to do that. So some basic instructions might actually be useful. Another feature is the microphone. You might actually think of using the microphone a lot, right? To, for example, create, let people could kind of give you voice commands to navigate around the app. Another feature of this is to kind of mute audio when a person just if you can detect a lot of noise around you, right? There's too much audio coming in through the mic. And so the camera, the microphone, even the proximity sensor on a phone can actually be used. The proximity sensor, for those who don't know, is the small it's basically under the earpiece of a phone. It's what happens when you actually take your phone up to your ear. The reason why the screen turns off is because of the proximity sensor. You might also want to use the accessibility menu feature. It's really cool to have app shortcuts, right? And so, what you might actually do is create app shortcuts inside the accessibility menu. So, if the user actually goes to the accessibility menu, they can find your shortcuts right there. For example, if the user goes to the menu, they could find, I don't have the menu enabled right now, but if I did, I would find things like WhatsApp's shortcuts and so on and so forth in there. And this turns our eyes to the last part of my presentation, which is actually using these the features across the OS to be able to get your users to use your app much more. They don't have to really open your app as much. And the first one is using bubbles, or using other items in your notifications. So say your app sends like a chat message or notification, you might actually want to have additional, when a notification pops up, you might want to have additional things right there, because let's face it, moving from one app to another when you're using assistive technology is actually slower than doing it when you're not. Okay, so it makes it much easier when the notification just pops up on your screen to be able to, for example, in Twitter, retweet it instantly, like it instantly, or reply to the tweet right away. So try to use these features. Notifications is something. One more thing that you might want to try is try to get different sounds for your notifications, so it becomes a bit easier to identify them. And my last part is actually Google Assistant. So Google Assistant is really cool, or even Siri on iOS is something that is used a lot. I can just be like, "Hey Google, turn on the flashlight."
Turning flashlight on.
"Hey Google, turn it off."
Voice search button. Tap to speak.
"Hey Google, turn it off."
Here it is. Get me a tour.
Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. Okay, sorry. "Hey Google, hey Google, one second.
Google Assistant widget.
Hey Google, turn the flashlight off."
Turning flashlight off.
Whew. I could also be like, "Hey Google, hey Google, send a WhatsApp message to Subramani sir."
Okay, what's the message?
This is a test of Google Assistant's capabilities.
I got. This is the test Google Assistant capability.
Oh,
Ready to
well.
send it?
No.
Since I'm having problems understanding your message, would you like me to make an audio recording instead?
Yes.
Got it. What do you want to say?
This is a test of Google Assistant capabilities.
Showing items 1 to 6 of 6.
Ready to send it?
Yes.
Sending your message to Subramani sir.
Sending message. Sending message. Showing items 1 to 3 of 12.
Boom.
Google Assistant. Pixel launcher.
And Subramani can actually comment if this message has actually received him. Or, I mean, he's received the message, sorry.
Mute.
Okay, Pranav.
Yeah.
We have Raidu sir, we have Mrs. Natasha, and Gautam, Karan. All of them are on the stage. Would you like to open up for discussion?
Yes.
Have you
I
done
am
with
almost
it?
done.
Or?
I will be opening
Okay.
up shortly. All right, so how can you use this? Well, Google Assistant or any virtual voice assistant can be used to great extent to enhance the cross feeling of your app, across the entire OS, like WhatsApp has done. It would be so cool if your app could, say send I could make a tweet just using Google Assistant, or I could like one using Google Assistant. And this ties into the fact that it becomes much easier, rather than switching to the other app, to actually just instantiate commands from the Google Assistant, or from any voice assistant for that matter. These shortcuts are actually available should you want to go through them in developer documentations for the specific platforms. I won't go into detail about that. But the bottom line is that the operating system gives you a lot of tools that you can use as a developer or even as a consumer to use or develop different applications. So now I'm going to open up for suggestions, questions, anything that you have on your mind. You're free to go ahead. We might, Ronnie, you can probably initiate the discussion, get people on stage.
Yeah,
Oh,
Pranav,
cool.
this is Raidu here.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. Sorry, I could not join the 3 o'clock meeting, but somehow,
No problem.
you
No
know,
problem.
I'll make sure that I'll be there next week.
Sure.
Subramani, thank you for getting me in. I mean, uh, this is a great education, Pranav. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thanks for doing this, and many people might be looking up to you, and they might know many things, so what you're saying, but they might miss something what they may not know. And this is a great education through Clubhouse, and I really appreciate what you're doing. uh, are you using Android mobile?
Yes, I am using an Android device.
Yeah. So whatever you mentioned on the Android side, like Google Assistant and everything, even iOS on the iPhone, Siri does. So it's equivalent to
Yes, yes.
Google
That's why
Assistant
I
in
actually said
iOS.
Google Assistant or Siri,
Right.
because I
So,
have known that Siri can do this.
but I have not touched Google Assistant, you know, not at all, not even once.
Okay.
I always use iPhone and Siri. I really don't know which is better. Do you know?
I wouldn't say which is better. I will say that I'm going to start off by saying Google Assistant feels more like an assistant. This is heavily opinion based, so I'm just going to kind of give my opinion. Even I'm someone who's actually used both platforms extensively. I've used an iPhone for around 4 years, and this is my second year of using an Android. And so I will say this Siri is blazingly fast. Okay. Siri, this is something I've noticed about Siri that's really, really good. That said, Google Assistant is better at doing things conversationally. It's better at, for example, continuing a conversation with you. For example, if you might say, "Hey Google, what are the coffee shops around here?" Um, and if it shows you some, like, "Hey Google, let's go to the first one," and then it might just open up Google Maps, for example. Um, it's also really good at understanding the context of your questions. And finally, I'd say Google Assistant just overall has it, as I said, it feels more, at least to me, like a virtual assistant, someone that's there to help you out. Whereas, in the sense that Google Assistant is a little more fun to use, as it has a bit more human, well, lack of a better word, it has a bit more human personality to it compared to Siri. Don't get me wrong, Siri is really good though.
No, if I might add a little to what Pranav said, sir, I would say that Google Assistant is also on Android phones, which are prolific, which are widespread in India, and if you take the blind community, there are very few who can actually afford an iPhone. So that way, to kind of understand that the level of accessibility that Android provides today is an advantage for us because you don't have to invest a great deal of money on your phone. I mean, you can buy a 10,000 rupee phone. Pranav, correct me if I'm wrong. 10,000, 12,000 rupee phone, and then you can get, the feature like a Google Assistant, which is brilliant.
Yes, that is true. And the good thing is Google Assistant as an assistant itself works at the same speed across different devices. So even if you I was actually for a long time I was actually using, as a technology tester, a phone that was around for 12,999. In fact, it was the Mi A2, and it was a low powered device, but the Google Assistant ran completely well on it, doing things like searching the web, sending a message, or anything really. It was outstanding.
Yeah, that's great, Pranav and Subramani. Thanks for pitching in. No, the another question I had, Pranav, for you.
Yeah,
Okay, you know I am from the software development perspective, right?
right,
So always I see avenues to develop something which is unique in the market, right?
right.
So from the accessibility perspective, you know, what you or anyone in this room, you know, have an idea of anything that is important, that is required at this moment for the accessibility, you know. Uh, do you have any ideas where we could see, yes, this is required today on the accessibility, yes, let's get it done? So do you have any kind of those ideas?
I'm going to I'm going to let Mr. Subramani take this, and then I'm actually going to pitch in after he does. He's kind of the more consumer out here. Even I'm from the development alley, so yeah. Do you have any points?
Mute.
No, no, no. Can you, sir? Can you just, if you don't mind, can you just repeat the question? Sorry, I was just dividing between work and this room. So could you please
Yeah,
repeat the
yeah.
question?
So what
So
I
what
was
I was
is,
is
what is the
what
current
is the current
space,
space?
right?
Sorry, your voice is cutting off, sir. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's clear.
There is a
There
lot
is
of
a lot of
noise
noise
coming from
coming
your
from your
side. I
side.
think.
I
Can you
think. Can
mute?
you mute?
I'll
Can
do
you
that,
mute,
sir. Sorry.
Subramani? Okay. So what I'm asking is, what are the technical challenges today we have uh, in the blind community, or any accessibility uh, technologies requirements, so that we can focus on that and get it done uh, to help this community. I know you said, you said to me one solution, which, on the writing side of it, that's a different, solution altogether. But today on the phone, what if we give something to this community that they would enjoy and interact more, and feel comfortable and get more things done from the productivity perspective as well?
Okay. So I'll answer this in two segments. One is, you spoke about software perspective. Uh, See, as you can see, Google Assistant is doing pretty well, basically because there are elements of AI getting into the assistive technology domain. That has made life easier for people like me. For example, there is also another software called Seeing AI. What it does is, suppose if I have a document, I can read a document, I can recognize faces. It is basically developed by a blind person from Microsoft, and he's made it available for free. So it can be used for multiple purposes, like from reading a visiting card to reading a document to recognizing faces. It wouldn't say that a person who the person is. Of course, if you have a picture of him stored in your phone, it does, but otherwise it tells you at least if the person who's standing next to you is a man or a woman without that person even talking. AI is making a huge difference in terms of how you can make life easier for people with disability. uh, it needs to be happening more in different areas. For example, navigation is one area where I guess AI and accessibility can be even better. I'll tell you, suppose if I'm entering a shopping mall and I'm walking past a store which I was searching for, I have to ask somebody to get into the store. I wouldn't like to ask. I would like to ask my phone. I would like to ask Google Assistant, or the program on my phone to find out the store for me. I mean, that can be improved. My navigability can be better if a phone assists me more than what it does currently. That's one thing. Second thing is in terms of device accessibility itself. See, I am also a social analyzer of the technology, how technology has transformed society, is something that I've been writing about as a journalist for about 13 14 years now. I can tell you that, once a person gets the phone in his hand, he's basically liberated. He's basically, today I'm sitting and talking to you. Unless I bother to mention that I'm blind, most people in this room won't be able to know that I'm blind. So I feel that, this device, the 4-inch device that I'm holding, has changed my life, has transformed my life. What is happening is also that it's creating a divide between people who can afford this and people who cannot afford this. Somewhere, I think social entrepreneurship and the business acumen of some people is required here, because there are ways of sustaining a social entrepreneurial venture that can take mobile phones to the next set of blind community, which are basically in the rural areas and rural hinterland, who doesn't necessarily speak English, but they are getting cut out from this technology. I think that should be the focus, because if typically a blind child in the urban areas get to use these devices, because even somebody whose father is an auto rickshaw driver, can afford a 12,000 rupee phone on a monthly installment. So that way, the kid is getting the phone. And today, the fact that a lot of programs, I mean, a lot of education is happening online, is also necessitating smartphone consumption in urban areas. But rural areas are a different story. So that's where I would like to, that's what I'd like to put across. If you want, if we have to solve, I mean, I'm a part of this too. I mean, like Raidu sir, and Pranav, I'm a part of the solution team. I mean, they come from technology, I come from the social side. I think we need to push the envelope a little bit more and find solutions that can make phones even more affordable. Say, if there's a sub 5,000 rupee phone, we can basically make all the rural, folks buy the phone and put it in the hands of people who are blind, who are basically in rural areas. That's my answer, sir. Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna add to that. Thanks, Subramani. My side is as a content creator. I actually create content on YouTube. I create content on Instagram and Twitter as well. And this is something that I've faced. I've had to now. It comes down to ease of use, and it's the fact that I've had to keep an iPhone with me at all times. Now, don't get me wrong. I completely love the iPhone ecosystem as well. But the fact about Android is that I like the fact that I'm given more choice. That's why I actually keep to Android as my main phone. However, then keeping an iPhone, the reason I keep an iPhone is that's the only device where when I open up the camera app, it'll actually tell me what's going on, and where to position it, how to tilt the phone, and how to get my face in focus. Um, this happens on very few apps on Android, and in fact, with the release of Android 11, Google accidentally broke this, and it kind of doesn't work anymore. So, the whole point that I would try to get forward is if we can make a solution, an app that clicks, but helps you click pictures um, properly, and helps you get your face in focus, properly, whilst also retaining quality. Like there are apps that do it, but they don't exactly have a lot of quality. Also, one thing that I'd really like to see is things like portrait mode, things like slow mo video, and things like, oh, I don't know, astrophotography mode, that are there in all these apps. I'd really love to see these modes actually coming to being accessible. And with today's I suspect, since Apple is doing it, and quite a few companies are doing. In fact, Samsung's camera app is actually quite accessible. You can use that completely, with no problems. So I'd like to see this come to more apps, come to, again, affordable devices. It comes down to that. And so that would be something that, as a content creator, would be really, really exciting for me, and it would reduce, hassle of having to carry two phones with me at all time when I want to take like an Instagram story or something.
Yeah, thanks, Pranav. Thanks, excellent. Subramani, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Regarding the 3 o'clock meeting, sir, whenever you know it's possible. I know that you are hard pressed for time. You are occupied with business, so anytime you feel comfortable, you please come and we will
Yeah,
start the work.
yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, I'll do that. And coming back to this discussion, I think I got a lot of takeaways from this discussion, Pramani. Predominantly, yes, affordability is one thing, which is a challenging one for everybody in the rural areas, right? So that is not under our control because manufacturers has to decide, right? But however, uh, the other two key takeaways are for everyone in this room is basically on the AI front, artificial intelligence, and also IoT. Now, one solution it comes to my mind from Subramani's talk is, if you go to a mall, right, you have to go to a Adidas showroom, but you don't know how to approach it, and your phone can give you a direction to go to the exact shop and shop around there, right? So that's not there today. I don't know whether it's there. I mean, I don't have a knowledge of being there for the blinds. I think that's one. And IoT and AI can play a lot of major role to give these comforts for uh, the disabled guys and disabled people. I don't want to call that, everybody. In my notion, everyone has that mindset, but um, and the accessibility point of view, I think IoT and AI can play a big role going forward. Thanks, Roni. Thanks for now.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for being around.
Thank you, sir. Natasha, would you like to ask? Would you like to say something about what Pranav has to share?
Any questions on your end as well?
Hi, Pranav and Mr. Subramani. Good to hear you again after a while. Um, so you're such a cool kid, Pranav. I was listening to the whole demonstration, and I was really pleasantly surprised with all the skills and everything. We have some of our members from the blind community. I pinged them, of course. I want them to be in contact with you as well. I had just one question. You were explaining very nicely and everything. I was wondering if you use the Google specs, and if not, why? And
Uh,
also,
yes, the
yeah,
Google
go ahead, go ahead.
glasses, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the reason, this is a very interesting question actually, and fun fact, I actually did actually get to test the Google glasses, but it comes down to the fact that the Google glasses, are extremely expensive. Well, okay, that might be an exaggeration, but they are quite expensive, and B, are actually hard to get hold of. Um, it comes down to the fact that it is hard for me to actually, to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised when I did get to try the Google glasses, but as I said, they're quite expensive, and to me it always felt like the Google glasses were in beta. Credit to Google actually, because they have been doing very good job with these glasses, but I did not try them mainly because at this stage it's actually hard for me to get one, even geographically speaking, and so that's why I actually did not get hold of them. But I am looking to get hold of a pair just to try out, more, just to play around with it in the future. Thanks for that. That's a good question.
Oh, thanks for answering that. Do you think Google Glasses would help you with your everyday life, especially on the if you're on the road, like if you can read street signs and um, signboards? Do you
Well,
think it'll help you?
yes, I do think if Google continues, so at this moment, what I got to see from them is that they're very much in beta at this moment. There's a lot of things that need to be worked on, but I think going forward, the Google glasses will be able to help out. I do want to address a misconception here, however. Google Glasses do not give us sight. Google Glasses are actually there to enhance our capabilities, to kind of do everyday tasks, right? Um, and that is something it's very important to keep that in mind. when you're looking at the Google Glasses as a product. Because the Google Glasses are only there to kind of enhance you or push you forward to do more on your own. However, what really think is a good idea are actually the Ira glasses. And Ira is an app that was created. I've always felt that this has been a very good idea. The fact that you can just put on glasses and a volunteer can actually help you with your tasks. I actually use Be My Eyes, which is the free app. I use that every day, literally. And I feel that we can kind of rest assured on the goodwill of humanity to be able to help us out when AI can't do it. And so I feel Be My Eyes and Ira actually helps even more because you don't have to keep moving your phone around. You can just look at the object. And so I feel Ira is something that really has a lot of potential. The only thing is it needs to get a little cheaper. Thanks for that. It was a good question. I will be looking into that as well.
What about some of the camera functions that we have? For example, if I know that you use the Android, so if you just go onto the Android to take a picture and then it tell like you click on the eye icon. I don't know how you're going to see it, and then it extracts the text. Do you use that function,
I
or
do. I do.
are you
Google
aware?
Lens. Google Lens is, I think, what you're talking about. The fact that I can take a picture and either search it, extract the text, copy
From
it.
your camera?
Yes. I do use that. Actually being a Pixel user, I do have that, and I use that every day to read text. It's amazingly accurate. Um, and I feel in that regard, Google has done a good job. The only kind of gotcha in this scenario is actually the fact that the Google Camera app actually is not very helpful when you really want to align objects. When you want to know if the object is in focus, and that is something that you will have to guess. That was actually what I was mentioning earlier. Is the fact that we need to have more announcements to be able to get an object into focus. But yes, I do use Google Lens to actually read a lot. Thanks for that question.
Great. I'm sure there's some of my friends in the audience. I'm sure they have a lot of questions, especially Mazen. Mazen is up on the stage.
Sure, sure. Go
He's
ahead.
also visually impaired.
Hmm.
So uh, perhaps you might want to give an introduction of yourself, because there's new people even in the
Sure,
audience.
sure.
Some of
I'll just
them
do
are
that.
our friends.
Yes, I will
Yeah.
just do that. My name is Pranav. I'm 15. Um, and I am a tech enthusiast. I was actually born blind. I'm a tech enthusiast. I love tinkering with tech. I'm also a programmer for the past 5 years. I have been writing code. Um, and in this room, for those who have just joined in new, we're just talking about how you can use the mobile accessibility, and how it can be improved, and also how you can use the functions to write your own apps and make them a bit more accessible. So, yep. Anyone have any suggestions or questions? I heard from your side, Natasha, there were some people who wanted to go ahead.
Yeah, can I?
Sure, go ahead. What's your name?
Yeah, my name is Mohammed Mazin. Mazin, you can call me Mazin.
Okay.
I'm also a visual impaired. Just now you have mentioned Be My Eyes, right?
Yes.
Um, I think it's a good thing, but sometimes it's functioning not so well. Is it a good uh, thing to use?
I will say this: every app. So Be My Eyes has let me down in a few situations. Where the audio has not been perfect, or sometimes it's directed me to kind of volunteers who were not exactly helpful. But the way Be My Eyes it's built is actually, you have to kind of rely on the goodwill of volunteers. And I feel that at this moment, Be My Eyes has way more helpful volunteers than it has not so helpful ones. And so, at least for me, Be My Eyes is something that I've been using for 3 years, honestly. Um, and it has very rarely let me down, because you have to remember all apps are not perfect. They're not bulletproof. They might have some errors. And the thing that really pitches it to me is that it's completely free. And to be free and to be so already so, perfect is something that I really like. At the end of the day, though, you have to, it comes down to you whether you really want to trust a random volunteer with your kind of what you're doing in your surroundings and so on and so forth. Good question. Thanks.
Mute.
Uh, I have one.
Sure, go ahead.
We're talking about mobile apps, right? But I'll go a little bit further.
Okay.
There are two apps that we can use, JAWS and NVDA for the laptops and tablets, right?
Yes,
Just now Subramaniam also I think has mentioned that the things are very expensive actually, especially for the disability sector. The tools are very expensive. Even I found Jaws is also very expensive. It's around I think $1,000 or $1,100.
it is. Yes, which is
Yeah.
actually why I
So
use NVDA as my primary screen reader.
yeah, I'm also using NVDA. So, but
Oh,
some features are there in JAWS that are not in that's not
Showing items 1 to 14 of 23.
access to NVDA. So I think JAWS is something little bit higher than NVIDIA, right?
I wouldn't say
If
that.
you have any,
It's it's more the fact that each software actually has its advantages and its trade-offs. JAWS is actually very good at OCR, picture description, and those kind of things. And I feel NVDA is very good at things like web navigation, math content, reading documents, reading math. NVDA Remote is a wonderful add-on that completely beats JAWS Tandem to it. It is much more responsive. And I feel in that regard, NVIDIA is a bit better. So at the end of the day, it comes down to which one you prefer using. And it is totally up to personal preference, because both screen readers have very different styles of functioning. And whichever style you prefer is the one that you should go with. I personally like the way NVIDIA is a bit more snappy. And so that's why I actually go with NVDA. But I actually know for a fact that Subramani here uses JAWS. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to, as I said, personal preference.
Mute.
is there any tutorials that available in NVIDIA? I'm also very much learning NVIDIA.
Sorry,
Uh, and
tutorials you said?
yeah, tutorials.
There are quite a few available on YouTube. YouTube is actually somewhere you'll find a lot. Um, Even if you Google up on NVDA, you'll be able to find quite a bit. So tutorials, there's not a serious shortage of them. There's quite a few on YouTube. And if you want, you can connect with me offline as well. My Twitter and Instagram are given in the bio, and so in my profile. And you can connect with me offline, and I can kind of send you some of those.
Pranav, what I would like to tell you is that these are some of the friends who are joining us from Maldives, and we had an opportunity to speak to them a couple of days back, and there is a great deal of requirement to sort of get them up to speed as far as technology is concerned, and
Oh, okay.
probably what we can do is we would request them to host us a kind of a training event for them later, so that we can address a lot of technical issues. Also, you can sort of help them with you took the class on Python for me, so maybe they are the right candidates for that. So anyway, we'll talk about it later.
That
I
is
also would like to let you know that Mr. George Abraham is here, and he would probably like to talk to you. And I'm just handing it over to George, and uh, uh, thank you, Natasha and others. Thank you for joining. And this is basically meant for demoing some of the things that Pranav does. Pranav is a teacher also. He teaches programming, so take advantage of him.
sure. I'm all yours. I'd love to help all of you out. So yeah,
Can I ask something, Pranav?
sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm building a platform basically for kids. So, like normal kids also who have the eyesight can also pick up the language of Braille and can apply it in their day-to-day lives. As I want to know the benefits, like you are a coder and you are the best example because people of parents of today's age they want their kids to become coders, and since Braille is a coded language in itself, it
Mhm.
can be coded to any music, any language. So like I want to scale up the requirement for Braille products so that people who actually need it, for them it is at affordable cost. And since like a keyboard for that matter can also just have six dots and you can communicate entirely everything through that. So I just want to know like what's the impact on your skills and on your mindset with the language of Braille.
Yes, I can fondly say that Braille actually helps me quite a bit. I do have a Braille display where it helps me even today when I'm actually debugging code. Because what happens is, when I'm debugging code, it's always better to read across Braille. And I feel Braille is something that uh, everyone should know. Even if you're sighted, it's easier, right? To be honest, a lot of my friends, I got the opportunity to teach quite a few of my friends Braille, and they've always told me that it's faster than actually just glancing at text. You can just run your hand over it and you know what's happening. um and in that sense, Braille actually helps a lot, to be quick. However, my only kind of thing with Braille, um that I feel could be addressed. And this is something that a QWERTY keyboard actually does much better, even though that might be a little harder to learn. If you know touch typing properly, I feel a QWERTY keyboard is something that is much more versatile when you're going to type faster. This is actually something. So I moved full time to using a laptop as my note taker in school, at the age of 12. And at that time, it is something that greatly impacted my notes. I could really write notes much faster. And I think that's the advantage of a QWERTY keyboard, where two things about Braille that are a little harder is the fact that Braille is just not much but just a little slower because you have to press so many dots, whereas on a QWERTY keyboard you can kind of just move your hand across, and once you build up the typing speed and the muscle memory, um, you you're good to go. And the second is the fact that many a times, this is something that I have faced on a Braille keyboard, is that it might not be completely accurate, and also it's the most accurate ones are quite expensive. Right? The Orbit reader is quite expensive, and so the thing is, the ones that are not as expensive, the display itself and even the keyboard is not completely accurate with the Braille dots itself. Now, the trade-off to QWERTY keyboards is the fact that after 2 hours of continuous typing, you can have serious wrist issues. Well, by serious I mean continuous wrist pain, and that is something that Braille doesn't have as much because you don't have to move your wrists across so much. So, but the bottom line is, at least for reading, I feel Braille is something that's really helpful. In fact, on my phone, I actually use the Braille, the Android Braille keyboard that comes with TalkBack these days to type out my messages, because especially on a phone, I think, see, Braille for a computer might not be as much helpful when you're writing, but when you're writing on a mobile device, I think Braille really comes into its own compared to the actual on-screen keyboard, because it's much faster to actually type with Braille. At least that's what I've experienced. I've been using that keyboard for a year now, and I've never switched back. So that is kind of my experience there. Good question.
And how is it helping like how is it assisting you in learning languages? Like there are many translation as well, like Spanish, Arabic, that you can pick up through Braille. So
Yes.
and even music, let's say do re mi fa is also coded. So can you communicate using music also, like in a language like this?
Yes, that is something. It's a very good point. As someone who's actually been in music composition for I think 2 or 3 years at least, have used Braille a lot. In fact, for music especially, I think Braille really again comes into its own, where it's much easier to read compared to a computer. even when you're learning languages, right? I think Braille is something that's much easier. However, again, the trade-off with Braille is that pronunciation's gonna take a hit, and this is honestly a trade-off with any kind of visual print, right? This is something that you get with a screen reader, something that you get with audio as well. That's the only kind of trade-off when you come to Braille, when it comes to languages. But that said, if you're trying to learn a language, trying to read one, I think Braille is the best way to do it, because it's much easier to be able to see the smaller nuances of each word, or in music, if each note, how many bars long is a note, probably at which octave it's played, what is the velocity of the note, so on and so forth. I think Braille really comes into its own over there. Thanks, but that was a good one. All right, thanks for that question. It was really good. Any other questions?
Just last thing I would like
Yeah,
to ask.
go ahead, go ahead.
Can you suggest me some good Braille apps for learning languages or anything like that,
Well,
or for learning Braille for the
for
matter?
learning Braille, I can't think of that many apps as such at the moment. There would, I think if you Google, you should be able to find, and even once I Google, I should. So if you can, you could probably contact me later on, and I can kind of give you more resources on that. However, uh, there is actually a device that I'd really like to suggest if you want to learn Braille. It's called the Anna. It was actually showed at one of the hackathons product expos that I attended back in 2019, and this device was quite cool because it could teach you Braille in a very fun way, and it could teach you quite a few more languages as well with Braille. Um, another but however, the best way to do Braille is just to kind of have it practical. So I would always say get a Braille display, get a refreshable Braille display with, possibly with a keyboard. I am someone who really loves the Braille Me device. It's portable, and just play around with it, try your hands on it, see how it goes. So that's kind of my experience with Braille, and that's something that I actually go for. Good questions.
Yeah, hi, Pranav. This is George Abraham.
Hi, go ahead.
I've heard a lot. Yeah, I've heard a lot about you from various people, from various sources, and I was wondering when I would have the chance of bumping into you, and I
Likewise.
believe it's today. So, since we are in the Q&A mode, let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Recently, I was in conversation with Professor Balakrishnan of IIT Delhi,
Okay.
and he was talking about uh, two devices that they have created, which is basically like a laptop which has a braille device, and I think it's called a braille input device and a braille output device. I was just
Yes.
trying to remember what it's called.
I think it was like a
What?
tablet. I remember they had created a tablet as well.
Yeah, one is priced at around 20,000 and the other is at about 40,000.
40,000, yes. It's the size of the display that kind of differs.
Yeah, I think one has 20 cells, the other has got 40 cells or
Yes.
something of that
Yes,
kind. Yeah.
yes. That's exactly it.
So, what is the first question is that have you actually tried it out, and is that something that you would recommend and promote? The second question is that you were talking about how you've been using Braille in various contexts, and you've also been talking about Braille being something which adds value to not only the blind but even non-blind people. And you also just now, while answering the previous question, were talking about the talking about Anna and some of the other apps and so on, which can be used. Now, I was just thinking if we are looking at universalizing or globalizing the use of Braille, uh, it needs to be available. Like if I want to learn Braille, meaning I've lived a lifetime as a visually impaired person, but have not learned Braille.
Okay.
And if I want to learn Braille today, the idea of going to a blind school and getting somebody to teach me Braille seems to be a little cumbersome and not the most attractive. And if you want to get, because Braille, if can be learnt by people universally, it could be a bridge. It could be another bridge. Technology has been a bridge. Braille could also be a bridge if we are able to kind of market it and promote it in a strategic manner. And that's a good thought. It might never happen, but I think it's worth pursuing because you know if blind people are going to learn Braille and go to school, it's a good way of connecting with the teachers if the teachers also know Braille. And are there kind of attractive, interesting, engaging ways of learning Braille? Can it be? Is it available online, for instance? Is it easy to learn? Can it be self-taught? These are some of the thoughts I have, and what would your response be?
All right, so I'm going to take the first question about the tab. Actually, again, I
Yeah.
got to try this out in the Hackathon's Product Expo in 2019, the hackathon that I was attending. And my answer for that, whether it's a viable option, is yes and no. For actually, reasons that actually were mentioned. Yes, because yes to people, who code, for example, as a reading device. I really like the Braille output. uh, it's helpful when you're coding or even reading an article. Skimming through an article is where Braille really comes into its own, because skimming through an article with a screen reader is still slower, right? It doesn't exactly feel like skimming. But when you're skimming with Braille, you can just run your hand across it, quickly just read some stuff and move ahead with your life. um, but as a writing device, I think Braille is a little on the slower side, especially when you're writing code, because you have to hold on multiple. This The other thing with Braille is it's not exactly built for one-handed use, and that creates some problems. Say your other hand is kind of engaged if you're eating or doing some other activity, and you kind of need to write something down real quick. There, Braille kind of falls a little out of place because it does become a little hard. I have faced this on my phone as well. It's virtually impossible to type proper letters using one hand, except for things like A, B, L and K, and I think those are the only ones. Um, and that also kind of plays into the whole ease of use factor. But as a reading device, I think that is quite a good option, provided again that the execution has been done well, which in that case the execution was done well. So if it was given, as an option to use a screen reader and Braille with a QWERTY keyboard, for example, I would actually have flocked to quickly get that, because again, to me, a QWERTY keyboard just seems a little more natural. Now, moving to the second question, this is an interesting one. And so, again, I've had friends who've learned Braille, and the things that they've always told me. I was actually very young when I learned Braille, so I could not exactly remember a lot of the ways I did it. But the things that my friends told me are things that were very interesting. At the end of the day, Braille is all about patterns, right? It's all about combinations. It's all about different patterns that you create. And I think once you start observing these patterns, right, it becomes very easy then to learn Braille. It's so the way one of my friends actually learned it was he took 6 dots. He told me to write some of the letters for him in Braille, and he wrote over it with print. And then he started taking Braille documents and transcribing them into print by just reading the document itself. And to be honest, I don't really think it's necessary for if a person doesn't exactly want to read it, to read the document. They can literally look at the Braille using, eyes, right? It becomes much easier then as well, to be able to look at the Braille and then just go ahead. And so I think the whole Braille is something that, just like coding, is something that can only be learned by applying it to the real world. And so I think the best way to do this is, even if you're self-taught, to be able to take what you've learned, the letters, try to apply them. Elevators are a very good example to try to identify what the number on the elevator says, even though the inscriptions below some monuments, right? I know quite a few monuments are doing this today. They have some Braille there, and it's in grade 1 uncontracted Braille, so it's quite easy to understand as well. So trying to read those in Braille, trying to read museums, trying to read signs, vending machines, And so I think a lot of these would be some very good ways to try out Braille. And once you get to try out Braille, I think your interest build. Your interest builds, and then once your interest builds, you dive deeper, and that's how a link is created, right? So I think it's all about applying Braille to more scenarios, which actually also prompts people to, you know, developers of buildings, architects, everyone, to apply Braille to kind of put it into use more. Elevators are, it's almost completely common now to. A funny story that I actually want to share here is I'd gone to an eye hospital, and guess what? The lift had no audio and it had a touch screen display, and so I think really that's ironic, but again, the whole point is to use Braille to its great extent, and then allow people to be able to use that as a practical example to learn more Braille.
Yeah, another question which, this is something that Subramani and I were discussing the other day about learning Braille. Now, somebody told Subramani that you need to scrape your fingers out, the skin out of your ends of your fingers, so that this dead skin, the dry, the rough skin kind of is taken out, and your fingers become more sensitive. That's the problem which people who want to learn Braille, especially visually impaired people who want to learn Braille later in life, in their 30s, 40s, and so on, when the fingers are not specifically sensitive, and some of these Braille documents, the dots are so close together, it's extremely difficult to kind of figure that out. You might say that that will come with practice, but it's a little putting off when it comes to an older person whose fingers are not specifically uh, sensitive, and if he's a person who's actually playing the guitar or something, his fingers are further kind of you have this very very hard skin around your on the tips, which you can't, even if you put it into fire, you don't feel the heat. So meaning that would be that has been that could be putting off, because uh, the fingers being kids learning Braille, fingers are extremely sensitive, and they're quick. It's quick on the uptake. But at 30 and 40 and so on, it becomes a little difficult. Your thoughts on that?
That's a good. It's a good point. To be honest, I have. Well, first of all, please don't scrape your fingers. That
Tell
is.
Subramani that, please.
Yeah. Yeah. For everyone, please don't scrape your fingers. That is just borderline evil. uh, but I really feel that again, it will come with so the way that I think at the end of the day, it's all about building that sensitivity in your fingers. You could try to, I completely understand what you mean by your fingers not exactly being as sensitive as when they were at one point, or things like that. It is an issue, and this actually turns to one of the trade-offs of Braille. But that said, I think one thing that really solves this is actually these braille displays, right? Because a lot of them are electronic, especially the more expensive ones. uh, they can keep their dots at like their maximum sharpness, right? So the dots won't be pressed down as much. And so I think there, even if you apply a little bit pressure on your finger, you will be able to read the dots. And that unfortunately or fortunately will come with practice. The speed that you get with just pressing your finger down will come with practice. This is a trade-off of writing Braille on paper, where it is not exactly sensitive to age. Where the I mean, it is sensitive to age. Sorry, where the Braille actually wears out with the document's age. With putting it in a file or a bag or something. And so that is something that I think needs to be addressed. But if you can use either plastic, I think is something that keeps Braille very well. Plastic or even Braille displays, I think that is at least at this moment trying to combat that problem. So then there was a very good point actually.
Right, Subramaniam, you can start your Braille now.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have to slit my fingers and
Please,
and bleed.
please don't do that. That's borderline. I mean, I don't have a word for it. It's just I can't imagine doing that. Please, please don't do that. So it was a good question. Any others? We can probably take a few final questions.
Oh, hi. Hello, Pranav.
Hi, you're a bit soft. You may want to come a bit closer.
So I had just had single question. I was looking about like needs for mobile accessibility. What are the needs that actually people demand and are like not fulfilled by the industry? Is there any platform friendly for this service? Like Reddit has these platforms, but those are also for visual oriented people. But I just wanted to know from Pranav, like if he has come across any source, like if he writes anywhere.
Well, for Apple at least, there is something called Appleways, which is a forum with full of well, visually impaired, but even other Apple users who kind of use iOS devices, and you might actually find some very interesting content over there. So you might want to check out Appleways. For Android, there used to be something called Eyes Free, which was an email list or a Google group where you could kind of join in and check things out there. Unfortunately, that has died last year. There are some others again on Reddit. You might find some um, blind Android users, especially for blind users, but you might find other communities as well. With Android, the problem is it's a little more spread out, so you might have to refer to multiple sources. However, if you do come in contact with me offline, once I've got more time to reassess and go through material, I will be able to send you some more, so you can connect with me on that as well.
So the thing is, I've followed you, Pranav, and if you have the time for it and will, love to connect offline or even on this platform just to discuss about one of my ideas. Like I'd love to get a validation. Like I've talked with Subramani before. We've also talked with George.
No, I think we would do that separately because
Definitely,
it's getting
definitely. This is
late
not
here.
a place for it.
Please connect with us. It will be lovely to get in touch. And anybody else in the audience who would like to ask some questions or probably confuse Pranav a little bit because he seems to be very clear. I mean, we should be doing our best to probably throw some surprises at him. Anybody who's up to it, please put up your hand and I'll bring you up and you can if you're a coder, if you're a web developer or if you're a musician, Pranav is ready for anything that you would ask him. Can I say that, Pranav? I mean, I'm
I,
saying it.
I,
Don't
I,
make me feel
yeah, I wouldn't,
embarrassed
I wouldn't
later.
say you can say that.
All right.
I'm still learning, but I will try my best to answer everything you throw at me.
Okay. So yeah. So please go ahead, raise your hand, and Pranav, I'll ask you one question before anybody could, and then let's see if anybody has any questions. We may probably keep the room open for about another 10 or 15 minutes.
Sure.
So okay. Now talk about Vidya Drishti and what you have been doing. I think you should do that now.
That is a very interesting topic. I'm going to go into the start of what Vidya Drishti is, how it got created, because that's a very interesting story. And then I'm going to tell you more about what we do at Vidya Drishti. So Vidya Drishti is basically, it stands for, a deeper sight into learning. And what we do at Vidya Drishti is we believe that writing today is a very important tool, right? In for every student, for anyone really, it has seeped into every single career, and so we try to help students become better writers. And by doing this, by using writing as a bridge, we're trying to connect the so-called not disabled or abled community to the so-called, in air quotes, disabled community. Um, and by connecting these, we're trying to kind of bring everyone together. So we have a platform. You can find it at vidyadrishti.net. It's on my profile as well, where you can go and just write something, anything that's on your mind, an article, a novel, anything. And then you can kind of share it out. And that's how we try to connect everyone. So all of our sessions are actually open to everyone. We do have accessibility features for people with visual impairments or any kind of impairment. but we try to make sure that the audience that we get is all diverse, you know. And something that we were actually lately thinking of is in our sessions, making sure that the audience don't know if the other one is actually blind or not, just to kind of keep it interactive. In the funny story that I'd like to end my answer with is actually, how did this begin? So with Mr. Subramani, we were actually having creative writing classes last year, and he was, and in fact still is, my mentor. And at that point, there was this moment where, you know, it was just three students. Okay, it was, you know, very small, and we were kind of deciding how to get like a poll up for book of the month for us. And our first idea was just put in the WhatsApp group, but me being kind of the geeky coder I am, decided to just kind of brew up a website that we could kind of use. You know, just the three of us. We could use it, enter book names, and vote for them, right? I proposed the idea, and Mr. Subramani, he stayed silent for 2 seconds, and he's like, "Why not open this to the public?" And 2 hours later, we Vidya Drishti was formed. So it was very interesting. In fact, this was done 1 month before Vidya Drishti was actually launched, so not exactly a long time before. And so that's kind of what I'd like to end with. And in fact, feel free to visit our website, where you'll kind of get more information about other sources as well. So you can kind of check that out. Good question.
Mute.
And we would like to definitely acknowledge Mr. Raidu Dhananjaya's
Yes. Oh,
contributions,
thanks
and
for
he has
reminding me
been
of that. Yeah.
showing a lot of enthusiasm and helping us a lot. So thank you. And a lot of people have come and participated in our writing camp also. Pranav, Pranav is the man, the front man. You know, he does everything. He's he organizes the whole thing. I support him and I advise him. I mean, hopefully not poor advisors. I do my best not to. So, uh, anyway, so that's what Vidya Drishti is all about.
Camera basting.
In
Camera
fact,
basting.
before we
Single
move
hand.
ahead, I'd like
Dismiss.
to kind of
Button.
take this
Dismiss.
opportunity to kind of
Nation.
mention that
Rohit.
we at
Saran.
Vidya
Others.
Drishti are actually
Sophia.
looking to
Mohammed.
expand
Moving
our
back. Leave quiet.
expand kind
Mute.
of our core
Mute.
team.
Mute. Button.
So, if you guys are willing to kind of do some volunteering work,
Okay, thank you, Subramani. I think Pranav, thank you so much for doing this. Mr. Asif is on the speaker panel. Mr. Asif, you want to say something?
yeah, go ahead.
Hi, good evening.
Hey, Pranav, can you go on mute?
No, I think that's Subramani's audio that's kind of taking.
Okay, now fine. Yeah, Mr. Asif, please.
Hi, good evening. I'm from Maldives. We have a blind community who is very tech savvy, and most of them are right now on Clubhouse as well. I just want to ask from Pranav, do we really have to choose between technology and Braille?
That is
Is Braille going obsolete? Just wanted to know the status of Braille right now.
That is a very good question. It's a very interesting one. In fact, I was talking to someone about this quite recently. And as I mentioned, at the end of the day, we don't really have to choose between technology and Braille. And to be honest, I don't think Braille is going obsolete at all. I think Braille is here to stay for a long time. But the thing is that Braille is just changing to adapt or to technology to kind of mingle with it. And I think that's something that's a very interesting prospect. The way that you can create Braille documents just by feeding in a typed document or a handwritten one into a Braille printer. And I think one of the things that we might actually be looking for is to be able to create a Braille image of a picture that you might click on your phone, for example, if you have a Braille display. And I think these things are really interesting as someone who's a developer and also as a consumer, because when you actually get to see Braille come hand in hand with technology, that actually opens up a huge number of doors, right? Me as a coder, as I said, I use Braille a lot. You might think, as I said, for articles, you might just skim through with Braille rather than scrolling through on your phone, which, let's face it, with our current technology, actually takes time. And Braille could also be used in various other ways. For example, we could use Braille to, like, take, as I said, take a picture of something, maybe a sign or something. And then if you have like a pocketable braille display, kind of convert it into that. You might also know that a lot of phones, right, today are coming in with a big display up front and a smaller display on the back. It would be really cool if, a phone came with a small, maybe a 5 to 10 cell braille display on the back to be able to just show these small information. It would also be really cool, if I could just read my notifications right off the back of my phone without actually having to move my hand up to read it from the screen. And so these are some real opportunities that Braille can be used for. But the bottom line is, I think Braille is not really dying. It's kind of just moving in with technology and creating more opportunities. It's a very good question. So thanks. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Pranav.
Thanks for that. Anyone else has any questions?
Mute.
I think there's another speaker up there.
Reudu Dananjaya. Gautam Mondhu.
Mondu,
Muted.
could you please ask? You want to ask anything or want to raise an issue or something?
O-N-D-H-U.
Mondu,
I just spoke.
you spoke now. Okay, thank
you're
you.
the person.
Yeah, Mandu.
Kiran Raj Gupta. Speaker. Followed by the speakers.
All right. I guess this is more or less 1.5 hours now, and we're very happy that you're all here, and Pranav is available, offline, and you can please connect with him, DM him on his Insta, and he's also a very active person on Twitter. So, or you can reach out to me, because I work closely with Pranav. Our aim in life is to make accessibility available to everybody. Also, to make accessibility a concept that everybody understands in the society, so that it is basically becomes mainstream and inclusive for everybody concerned. That is why we have named this club Disability Dialogue, because there has to be a dialogue between all kinds of people, and people with disability specifically require inclusion. So technology has enabled people like us. I have become a journalist basically because of screen readers and technology that I use, and Pranav is the same. He has become he's able to teach programming to a lot of people. So anyway, please get in touch with us, and we'd be very happy to be of help to anyone at any in any way possible. Thank you for being here, and please do visit vidyadrishti.net. That's our website. And if you are a writer, if you want to contribute for people who are consuming, people who are with disability who are consuming articles from there, please write, and please make it a richer platform. Thank you, and good night to
Thank
all
you,
of you.
everyone. I will see you quite soon, and it was wonderful being with you. So good night.
Dig. Win everyone. Dig. Hand from profile pic. Audio settings. Recorder. Search. Review. Audio quality. End room. But. End alert. Ending the room will permanent. Cancel. End room. WhatsApp. Multi-line editable text. WhatsApp. Multi-line chat list. Subroom 02 p.m. transcript. As Computer 07 p.m. Got the PSC on live. Subroom 02 p.m. transcript. This is Google Assistant capability. As Computer 07 p.m. Got the PSC on live. Sharing community 20 p.m. As Computer 07 p.m. Got the PSC on live. Multi-line editable text. Type with that. Open close. 07 to the PSC. Got application. 736 p.m. You're very low. 736 are labeled in your clearly. Show with that reason. 7:20 p.m. Multi-line. 9:06:57 p.m. WhatsApp. Chat list. As Computer. Tap with Academic Music 54 p.m. 91,768,728. Clapping hands. Awesome performance. During both sessions and all participants say to remember for a long time in red messages. Road to IE. 8:34. And radio 22 p.m. 91. Sharing them. Subroom 02 p.m. Root access 6:40 p.m. 1. 600 for. Sample Uber play button. Action hand smiley face. Sure ready 46 p.m. Tour. Video 3:17 p.m. 08. Let's search file complete control elements first. New com selected. Y selected. Busy bank. 5. YouTube. Button. YouTube. Home. Button. Skip navigation. Search. Button. Search. Button. Search. Your voice. Button. Create. Button. YouTube apps. Button. Notifications. Button. Site subscriptions. More from 6 to 2 Newman. SAT. Even. Advertising Academy of Music. Stream 6 minutes ago. 3 hours. WhatsApp. Row 1 column 2 3. Media controls. Row 1 column 3 3. Media controls.